Have you ever wondered that you wanted to work for DoD or Department of Defense? And what are those requirements? What are the certification? Like I always curious, wanted to know about it. And that's one of the topic I wanted to bring it on my podcast. And I came across one of the gentlemen, Jonathan Sargent, which I will have him introduce himself. And he is going to share some of the exciting news, what has changed. So without further wait, John, first introduce yourself and we get more deeper into the certification.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name's John
Uh,
Sargent.
mhm.
I've spent about 26 years in IT and cybersecurity, working for both Fortune 100 organizations as well as some DoD and other government agencies, helping with security, compliance, mitigating risk. Um, an MBA from Georgetown University and a master's from information technology from the University of Maryland, and a bunch of security certifications, which we'll talk about probably as we're going through. Changes.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, let's talk about and good you from
sure.
Georgetown. So I'm also Georgetown alumni. Good to know that.
Awesome.
I did my master's from there. So let's talk about those who are first time watching this or not familiar. What is DoD basically?
So that's the Department of Defense. So that's all military organizations in the United States.
All right. And for those jobs for DoD, what is the criteria for somebody to get into those, other than like public and commercial space we see versus military?
Um, so yeah, this is not for active duty military folks. This is for civilians who are
Okay,
working for military, because that's a very different different avenue.
right.
But there are there has been for several years a framework around requirements for particular roles related to cyber in the DoD. And the standard in the past was DoD 8570, which established specific certification requirements when someone was working in cybersecurity within Department of Defense.
Hmm.
And they had, there was the Security Plus, CISSP, or CEH. Depending on your job role, particular certifications were required. Um, what was missing there was the experience requirements and performance requirements. So while someone may have the certification, um, well, I think what was missing and what the DoD recognized was missing was that the exam didn't necessarily prepare you to handle the sophisticated nation state attacks, zero day exploits, the role that you're being asked to fill. So they revised that standard. So then this 8140 standard has been released. It's built on the DoD cyber workforce framework, and the intention is to expand the career pathways where you can move with certain certifications. It opens up new career tracks. It defines new work roles: cyber defense, cyber intelligence, cyber operations. Um, it still has a certification as part of the requirements for these roles, but there's also demonstrated capability as a requirement. Um, and so they're trying to incorporate experience as well as certifications to ensure people are maintaining their capabilities and uh, they have the appropriate expertise for the role that they're filling.
So what was the old certification number and what's the new? I think you mentioned,
Okay, sure,
yeah.
yeah. So the previous was 8570,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then the new standard is 8140.
8140. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is ineffective now. And so you've been talking about the new certification requires you to have practical knowledge, the hands-on experience, just not knowing the theory, right? So can
Yeah.
you shed some light what used to be in 850 and then discuss, okay, when it comes to
Mhm.
8140, this is what you expected to learn and show.
Sure. So the certifications are essentially similar, that were required for a job category, but they have specific what they're calling KSAs, which are knowledge, skills, and abilities aligned with that role. So that you need to, understand the role from a knowledge perspective. So knowledge of TCP/IP, right?
Right.
Knowledge of other networking protocols, right? And then skills, showing that you're able to complete the skills related. So you can configure a firewall. You can utilize the SIM, whatever the role is.
Mhm.
And then there's the abilities, which is to take those skills and knowledge and apply them to a real world situation. So the ability to use to analyze packet data, packet capture data, and their role as in this case where we're talking about maybe someone in the cyber operations role. So um, it's it's not a it's not an entire replacement. It's actually gives some more flexibility, but the intention is to um, take the focus away from just basic certifications and
Mhm.
focus on skills, real world capabilities, um, have some more flexible work roles with different knowledge, skills, and experience that are required for that particular role. It allows for some more broader and specialized tracks. And it really does focus on hands-on capability and continuous evolution.
So in 8140, is this set of like, does it have only one certification or is there a set of certification?
Oh no, the certifications are still based on the job role. And actually, if you were to go to the DoD 8140 site, there is a qualifications matrix which shows for different roles what qualifications are
Right,
required. And it's pretty extensive. So,
right.
but there is a breakdown by role. Um, and what happens if you're hired for a role, you have the capability, but you don't have the certification. There's a path to start in the role, get that foundational qualification in the first, I think it's 6 to 9 months, and then complete your qualification to be fully qualified for a role in the
Mhm.
first. Depending on the role, I think it's like 12 to 18 months of uh, capability to complete all the things you need to take on a new role.
Right. So yeah, they have quite a different role as you mentioned, like cyber defense or cloud security
Mm,
leadership, right? So one
right.
has to choose where they think they fit the most and then set and take those certification basically.
Right, right. So there's some kind of foundational qualifications, so that'll be knowledge, skills, and
I see.
abilities, and then there's also some continuous professional development required. So, and a lot of the certifications have that attached to them,
Hmm.
but it's not just a part of the certification; it's now attached as part of the qualification for the job role.
Right. And then anybody can apply for these jobs, right? Any civilian as well.
Yeah, there might be specific qualifications, like I think you've asked earlier about security clearance.
Right.
That would vary based on where they were working and what kind of systems they were working, whether they require a clearance of any kind, or more all the way up through top secret. Whatever
I
the
see.
requirement. That's really focused on the individual role, not the category of role.
Okay. What do they really need to know when it comes to the basics?
Yeah, so again, it would depend on the role that you were looking for.
Right.
But the DoD has put forward a training course that's on their website, which is public.cyber.mil,
Hmm.
and you can launch that course and you can walk through what the DoD 8140 consists of, how it works, how you find out, what requirements based on the job role that you're looking for. So if you're interested in cloud security or you're interested in cyber operations, those qualifications may be different. What experience is required and what certifications are required in that. But it will walk you through very detailed. I certainly don't have it memorized. I think there's 57 different tracks and a whole bunch of different job roles within that matrix. So I definitely don't know what the qualifications are for all of them, but it is very well documented. Uh,
Right, right, right. Yeah, I mean they have different even level of categories like a basic, intermediate, and advanced.
sure.
And cloud security is interesting. I
Hmm.
Because I know other than this, we see cloud security has been one of those sought after skills. So now on these different job roles, when it comes to the experience, so let's say somebody already in the industry for 5 years or something, what is the
Sure.
like? Can we talk about some of the experience required,
Capability and the experience are related to the level of role,
right?
but they're trying to align more closely to some of the private sector cybersecurity workforce frameworks, so that it's easier for folks to transition from corporate roles to DoD or other government agency cybersecurity roles. So there is a clear path for transitioning from public sector to military or vice versa.
Mhm.
Um, but again, specific certifications, it again depends on the role, but they're looking for stuff like if you're looking at cyber defense, if you've done capture the flag exercises or have been part of a red team exercise, um, those types of things. What was your previous job role, and does it apply to the current? And there are certainly still entry level roles which don't have such a high requirement, but again, it makes it easier for people to align their experience and certifications with particular job roles within the DoD. I think it's a good change for cyber professionals, and for the DoD, to make sure that people are in roles that they have the right capabilities for, and that there's a clear path for advancement. Right? What do I need to do to move into a more senior role? Should I be interested in that? It's very clearly laid out for folks.
Right. So lately, what is something interesting you can think of? Okay, yeah, has changed or anything you would like to share based on your experience in various different industry, both in defense and the public sector.
Yeah, I think across the board there's a huge increased competition for talent. There's a huge need for cyber talent, in commercial sectors, right? Financial services, tech companies, but also in government. The skills in cloud security, threat hunting, incident response. Those are in high demand, continue to be in high demand, and I think the demand is going to continue to increase as nation state attacks continue to be part of the norm of day to day.
What do you see as a threat, as a help, when you hear something about AI?
Sure. I think AI, like any other tool, needs to be implemented thoughtfully. The fact that it's available, that nefarious actors are going to leverage AI to make their attacks more effective, more flexible. I think we have to look at how we use them again to make our defensive personnel more effective, more flexible. There's certainly a capability with new AI tools to filter through data much more quickly, to detect patterns that might have been difficult to detect individually. There's a heavy need for individuals to take that data that they're receiving from AI, and make it actionable. But we certainly need to leverage every tool that we can to make sure that we're keeping up with the attacks that are coming, and AI is just one of those things that we need to leverage for strength.
So initially we started conversation around the DoD certification, what has changed. But again, been in the industry for so long, let's talk about a little bit on the risk, right? Cyber
Mhm.
risk is one of the things we cannot ignore. Um,
Sure.
so so we see those all kind of risk, all kind of threats are there.
Mhm.
But how one can make sure, okay, no, and prioritize.
There are certainly risks. Whether you're publishing on the internet or you're hiding behind a perimeter, that there is risk in everything. The risk varies, and they need to make a decision based on the value of what you're doing and its associated risk, and how can we mitigate that in the way um, that's most effective, right? We want to minimize the data breach risk. We want to potentially minimize the operational disruption risk. Uh, Something that we don't talk about enough, I don't think, is minimizing insider threat risk. Uh, that seems to be of high concern to a lot of CISOs and heads of security. Um, and cloud and cloud infrastructure represents a risk. It doesn't necessarily represent a large risk. It's a very different attack surface. It's very public, but it certainly can be
Right.
implemented in a way that's just as secure as any on-premise solution. But it does need to be implemented with care, and thoughtfully, to make sure that risk aligns with what you're putting forth.
Yeah, for the cloud, I've been very vocal about it because it's not
Mm.
behind your perimeter anymore, right? Either in
Yeah,
the cloud or hybrid, you gotta start with the identities. And we've
absolutely.
seen how much does it cost if the credential breach happens? That could be millions and millions. And we've seen
Oh, sure.
breaches one after every other breach in the last 4 or 5 years. Millions and millions of record has been stolen. To take examples for, I think one I can think of is T-Mobile. So while we're talking about these things, right, where cyber risk we talk about, and then it leads with somebody's personal identity theft or personal
Mm.
identifiable information, right? So are there any guidelines or regulations you can talk about, or somebody just can go start looking into those and apply those because solutions are there.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly privacy frameworks, and they're changing, right? It was GDPR in the EU
Right,
came out, some time ago, and now California's got their CCPA, and New York has their framework, and I expect other states will begin to do something similar, or hopefully we come to a consensus of a framework that everyone can use rather than um, having a different one in each state. That becomes very cumbersome for companies to comply if they're operating across states. It also opens up the opportunity for someone to not comply with one or the other because it was difficult, or whatever the reason is. If they're not avoiding or mitigating that risk, even though it's required, it may be a requirement. They may be accepting that it could happen, and the fine that comes with it is it becomes an acceptable law. So I think those privacy frameworks certainly exist.
mhm,
I think there's too many of them, and they all cover similar components.
right,
And so if we could come to less frameworks that were more comprehensive, and kind of agree that these standards are essentially equal, and you can comply with one or all of them, and make it easier for companies to make sure that they're compliant. And compliance certainly doesn't eliminate the risk, but it
right,
does ensure that you have the minimum, or a compliant program,
right.
and doing the uh, essential work.
Yeah, there's a famous saying, or I have brought this topic before regarding compliance. So it's a vice versa. If you have right security controls, you are compliant already. But if you're compliant, you're not secure enough, basically,
That's sure.
right? One more thing I'm looking at is in your role on a leadership role, how challenging it is because you come from that security mindset, and when you have to work with engineering team and architecture team and help them, advise them, right? Do you see a challenge and how big of a challenge? Because sometimes, they say, hey, yeah, let us do what we want to do it, right? They just bypass all the security stuff.
Sure. Yeah, and that's a a thing that needs to happen, a cultural change that needs to happen within your organization, so that security is everyone's responsibility. It's not just a security issue, right? Security risk um, is a business problem, right? And so we need to kind of bring everyone together, doing things like shared cyber town halls with lines of business, so they understand what security is bringing forward, what those risks are, what that means from a reputational perspective, so that we move forward as a unified, secure organization. It's better in the end. It's better for everyone. Um, so you know, working in partnership with development teams, with the lines of business within your organization, so that security is taken into account as as the requirements are being developed. That limits rework, accelerates implementation in a way that keeps things secure from the beginning, and in the end is less expensive. Than again than trying to bolt on security requirements at the end of a development cycle.
So, is there anything you'd like to share or something?
Yeah, we're trying to make smaller organizations more aware of cybersecurity risks. That's one of the things that I'm doing now. I'm kind of taking a step back from the Fortune 100, and I'm trying to take the same capabilities and qualifications and bring it to mid-market companies. A lot of those, smaller companies don't have the luxury of having large security teams, and so they might be making decisions without all the information. And so, we're trying to educate, trying to bring those capabilities down, and let smaller organizations leverage those same experience and
Right.
capabilities without the high cost.
Yeah. And this is where I can see the beauty of cloud with the cloud service provider, like whether it's Azure, AWS, or GCP, the tooling they
Yes,
have in the cloud. So I often say you get the business class service at the cost of economy class. Because
absolutely.
imagine these large enterprises, they have all the money in the budget for a mid-sized small company. They don't
Mhm.
have this much money to spend on it, right? But if they're in the
Sure.
cloud, they're up and running, so they don't have to worry about hardware, compute, and anything. It's just available as a service and start
Yes.
using it.
Yes, certainly eliminates the requirement for large capital investments up front, and makes it much easier to tie the cost of a service to the consumption of a service, so that you're not making large investments before there's a return. So
Right.
yeah, the cloud is definitely can be a game changer for small business, for startups, and that where they're trying to leverage uh, all the best tools, but not paying large license fees for stuff they're not using yet.
Thank you again for your time and your insights you shared with us on this podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you, Adnan.
And again, those who are watching, if you have any feedback, please do let me know. I'll put all the links for DoD certification, which we have talked about it, on the comment. If you're interested in any future topic, let me know. Feel free to connect with us on social media like LinkedIn. All right. Thank you, everyone.